While things are getting really crazy with Remain, I'm actually kind of surprised they went as dark as they did, but at the same time, kind of have some feelings at the very beginning that something was kind of looming around the corner. But got done with episodes 6 through 8, and this is my impressions on the series so far. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of been for a while, they've been kind of hinting at something that obviously is looming. As episode 6 kind of opens up, they have this little moment where each of the members they're staying over at the club, they're doing their training during this break. And it really does, like I said, each one of them are giving their own secrets. Everybody's giving off a secret. And yeah, most of them are kind of fun. Like, I always think of this person as Boo in my head because of how his name is laid out. Technically, Shugo gets a little dark in the ideas talking about how his mother and father are divorced. But then it comes around to Minato. Minato says, he's kind of afraid about regaining his memories because he's always seen in shows where when somebody regains their memories, they forget about what they've gained since then. And so he's afraid of losing the, memories he has of his friends. And again, we're already flagging this whole aspect. But yeah, it was kind of cute because Yoshiharu didn't want to say anything. But then we'll find out later his confession technically is that he didn't necessarily want to join the club. And it was kind of sad because it gives us a hint that he's being bullied the entire time. And everybody's trying to help him out because he feels like he's holding everybody back, but at the same time, he wants to be there. And it gets in this whole thing where these guys were, laughing about this water polo thing, and then they kind of pushed him into joining it. And what's kind of cute is that he does end up joining, he does enjoy his time there, but at the very end, it has this thing where he ends up running into this guy again that pretty much bullied him into joining it. And the guy's kind of like, you don't have to stay in there. He's like, no, I'm going to stay. I'm enjoying it. He's like, oh, that's good. It was really kind of a cute moment of seeing another side of somebody that seems to be a bully, or at least that, somewhat bond that the two of them have. I think they kind of imply that the guy knew him from their previous school, their junior high, but it was cute to see that guy it kind of felt like he was helping him, but at the same time he was kind of pushing him, but then accepting that, kind of helped him out. This kind of leads into them wanting to get jerseys, and each one of them seemed to have some sort of, I don't know, issue that kind of comes up because of them trying to find a name to put on the front of their jerseys. They always have like a power word basically to put on the front of their jerseys, and they're all trying to think of something. And one of the things that kind of comes up from this is the word change from Joe. And Joe's talking about how he wants this name because it's kind of a everybody in the group needs to change something. And it starts to get into the fact that apparently his father was the club president at some point for the water polo team. And it gets in this aspect that they all kind of enjoyed their time together, but at some point he lost his mother, and his father kept like working later, had a better job, but was still trying to feed him and cook food for him. And at some point he wanted to help his father by eating before he gets home. And this turned into a thing where he thinks that his father feels that he didn't like his cooking. And it was kind of like a sad thing where, the loss of his mother eventually led to them two kind of separating. And so I'm hoping that eventually they'll have some kind of moment where it comes back. I was kind of the entire time thinking, just put that photo album on the table, and when he comes home, boom, strike up conversation. Come on, dude, you can do it. I'm sure they'll eventually get to it, but it was kind of one of those moments of it. That really does suck. It is something that you don't really like to see. Obviously, Shugo doesn't want to do it because his jersey is a sign of a rivalry with his brother. But eventually, seeing the story that he kind of told kind of led him to accept it as well. I was almost thinking they were going to just go ahead and have the jersey they choose be the same colors as the one that he actually has, conveniently enough. But it was really goofy to see that kind of turn to essentially them making the choice of change and how closely that resembles Strange. They end up messing it up, and it's one of those things where like, what is this place you guys get these jersey done? They can't even figure out that's probably not something you'd want on there. They even put like water ball on the back of it. So their jerseys are really messed up. But no, this is episode 7 ended with quite a shocker, and that was, and like I said before, there was something they're kind of hinting at all the time. Like the scene where they got in the car accident, it seemed like he was pretty not really social with his sister. And then it gets into the fact that at the point where Minato goes to Chino and says, hey, thanks for telling me about that promise. I'm really liking water polo. Well, what's her response? Oh, yeah, okay, that's great. And then as he leaves, she has this very stern face, obviously showing that something is in the background that's not really being told. And then to compound on that, the moment that he comes home that day And she's like, and the sister's like, he's changed. He's so much better than he was in junior high. I'm like, they are hinting at something pretty bad here. But yeah, he goes up in his room, finds this one disc he hasn't watched yet. It's not even labeled. And apparently it is a video that Eitaro had taken of him yelling at the rest of the class. And yeah, big shocker here. Minato was a jerk. Minato in his junior high years was an absolute jerk. And it's one of those things where he was a jerk in a sense that he was an ace, and he took that to bloat his ego. And so he was really mean to anybody else that was not up to his standards. And this is something he ends up confirming by going to Chinu and saying, I found this video and a flood of my memories came back. I got them all back. And I could still smell the chlorine that day. All these memories came back. And that's when she reveals to him, do you remember Ichinose? And he's like, don't think so. And then she's like, well, he was a guy that I looked up to. He was great at water polo. He's the reason why I got into water polo. And at some point, you became the ace, and he was your senpai, but you talked down to him. You bullied him. And it shows basically this idea that he was calling him out in the game, and they end up benching the guy. And then eventually, this essentially bullying that Minato was doing to Ichinose eventually led to him changing schools and dropping out of water polo altogether. So Chinu, in a sense, hates him. And this is where we get into this whole idea that's kind of difficult to follow. Because what she's essentially saying is, because you bullied him out and he was the one that I looked up to, I'm going to get back at you by making you stay in water polo. Like, that's why this is what I was saying before, this second promise I knew was going to end up being like something she made up. Sure enough, it was something she made up to force him to continue to play. And it's almost this sense of, Japan has this kind of weird thing when it comes to rivalries and the winner and the loser. And this idea that the losers never get super angry about it. They want the winner to continue and to hold on the legacy. Nothing is more disrespectful, in a sense, than somebody beating you and then losing. If somebody beats you, you don't say, gosh, you must have cheated. You say, you better win, otherwise it'll make us look bad. It's almost like this thing, if you beat me and then you lose to the next guy, it makes me look worse than two people now. So it is something that I guess I can kind of follow. But yeah, Chinu basically fulfilled her first promise, which was to kiss him. She actually hated him for asking her out. But then made that second promise in order to force him to continue to play. And this gets where I'm so mixed on where this goes from here. Because as he's going home, he's obviously really distraught about the idea of finding out that he's basically was a jerk this whole time, and he forgotten about what he did to this guy. And as he's on his way home, he falls over, hits his head, and this is where we get really kind of, I don't know, I really don't. He in falling, ends up causing new trauma where the last year that he's gained gets lost. And so now he's back to being jerk Minato of junior high. And so, yeah, he's basically destroying everything. He's basically being mean to his mom for screwing up and getting him in a car accident. He's obviously being mean to his new team. He wants to go back to his old team, but his coach there is like, look, you've lost a year. We're way ahead of you now. There's no way that you can keep up with us at this point. You've been replaced. It's just not going to work. And this is kind of throwing him way off the deep end. As we have our new team is, essentially trying to figure out if they want to continue or not. But at the same time, Minato's over here trying to get back into his old team, but he can't. So yeah, I don't, like I said, it was really pretty crazy having him, it revealed this aspect that he was like a total jerk in this past. Like I said, was kind of hinting at it just based on the idea that everybody was, I guess it goes back to even at the very beginning when they weren't really certain that they wanted him to, they weren't pushing him back into water polo. They were kind of uncertain. And I always kind of felt that was a thing of like, well, let him do what he wants to do. We want to make sure that he's happy. All this really bad stuff happened to him. Just let him do what he wants to do. I think they even mentioned the doctor says to let him lead the conversation. So they were wanting to allow him to do what he wanted to do. But at the same time, essentially, it was this whole time hinting at the fact that he was angry or that he was a bad person, that they may not want him to go back into water polo. I was kind of curious they didn't make it more obvious than that, how much he has changed. And it wasn't really put into words until, like I said, with his sister saying, he's so much better than he was in junior high. you kind of feel that they should have kind of hinted at it a lot more than they did, but they didn't. But at the same time, that makes me not... It's one of those things where I hated Eitaro early on because of how much he kept pointing out how, Minato's terrible. He was so much better in junior high. But now I don't mind because of how much of a jerk he was to him. It's like, yeah, he should have said it more at this point. But yeah, I'm really curious where they're going to go from here. It does beg the question if it's going to take a point in which he finally remembers that last year and then has like a really crazy breakdown with him basically fighting over himself. And essentially what it's turning into is you had the two pictures next to each other, and it was almost hinting at this idea of a choice. He has a choice at this point when he finally unlocks that last year that was conveniently lost, that perfect slice of a year. When he regains that, he's going to have this moment where he's going to have to choose fun versus seriousness and all-out craziness. I mean, he basically has that conundrum. His old team versus new team. The jerk him that was winning versus the fun him that was, possibly going to be losing. And I'm really curious how they're going to take that going forward. The next 4 episodes are really going to be telling. Like I said, I had a huge problem with how they did this whole, okay, now he swapped to the bad person, conveniently losing 1 year. But I kind of want to trust the writer to really do something really cool with this and not make it really just goofy and messy, but we'll see. But I'm kind of excited to see where it goes from here. But that's my thoughts on Remain episode 6 through 8. I hope you guys enjoyed my impressions. If you did, leave a like down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episodes. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon if you can. And y'all take care.